Ready, set, podcast.
All right, welcome to the ever-evolving, never-ending Ready, Said podcast. Donald Trump down here, and then behind me is Sleepy Joe and Ron the Con. And essentially what this is where my political stance is going to be, who I am basically in favor for. Obviously, Biden's not coming off the shelf, and I might be adding more Democrats, just former people to that side. Ron Con's up there because of the way he's being framed, and we're going to get into that in just 1 second. Essentially, one of the reasons he's up there is when you see Democrats, corporate Democrats and neocons having very similar talking points about Ron DeSantis. Ron the Con is the guy to run for president for the Republican nomination. That should give people a lot of pause, especially newcomers to politics. Like when you have Democrats agreeing with essentially the never Trumper camp, or neocons who are like, yeah, I guess I'll vote for Trump. Like, this is problematic. And again, we will get into this. So that's why Trump's down here versus the last few episodes where I had everyone up there, So we'll see how it goes. Again, like, comment, share. Let me know what you think. There's a clip we put up a little bit ago that got a little bit of traction, and a lot of people, they definitely wanted to tell me what they think. So let's get to this main story here. So one of the big takeaways from the midterm elections was that there was supposed to be this red tsunami, red wave, kind of like a blue wave of what we saw in 2018. And it ended up being nothing but. It was essentially a red trickle. And one of the biggest pivots, which again we'll get to in a second here, is how that blame was pivoted to the Trump side of the Republican Party. And that is anything but the truth. And let's talk about why. So one reason is you have Kevin McCarthy. He is supposed to be the future Speaker of the House for the Republicans. And as we get closer to this next Congress, he's got a very thin margin. I think last I checked, he's at 220. You need 217, so they only need to repeal 3 Republicans away. Is that possible? Well, we watched what the Freedom Caucus did 5 years ago, as Trump came into power, and they were a big thorn in the Republican side. And I believe the House had a bigger majority than 3. So that'll be a very interesting thing to see. Now, with Kevin McCarthy, what I find interesting is, this guy was in charge of getting Republicans elected. And what did he do? He elevated bad candidates. Who was that lady out of Virginia? Maya something. I might be even getting her name wrong. But, she didn't win. I think she was taking on Spanberger. That was in one of the Virginia suburbs. And that was supposed to be a Trouncin. And I think she lost in the single-digit range. But still, that was supposed to be, a pickup for Republicans. And it was anything but. And a lot of these, honestly, if you're wondering, again, I might be jumping ahead of myself, but just so I don't forget, a lot of these Republican pickups that you're seeing are coming out of the state of New York and Florida. So it was Lee Zeldin who ran against Kathy Hochul, and he basically pulled all those Republicans running for federal Congress over the finish line with him, as did Ron DeSantis down here. Ron the Con. He's a great statesman, but can he be the federal officer that we all hope for? I don't think so. Anyway, I digress. So, of course, my computer. There we go. So we see Kevin McCarthy elevating bad candidates. There was a lot of races that, the Republicans should have won. Kevin McCarthy was responsible, and so is Ronna McDaniel, who's the RNC chair, and I think she's running again if she didn't get fucking reelected, which if she got reelected, that just shows how the Republican establishment is just as ridiculous as the Democrat establishment. This is, again, the uniparty. This is what we call this, because all these people are the same. They're Washington bureaucrats that don't want to have any accountability whatsoever for their failures. They only want to be rewarded for the good things that they do. And this is kind of a weird mirror to what goes on in Silicon Valley as well, where you have companies like Google who will reward you on the upside for creating a project that makes Google billions, but if you cost Google billions, nothing really happens. So no wonder nothing ever gets innovated out like Silicon Valley anymore, and that's why we're stuck with what Facebook, I'll put it this way, TikTok is the new thing, and that's out of China. But anyway, another thing that we see that is at the fault from these establishment Republicans like Kevin McCarthy, Ronna McDaniel, or the Senate leader Mitch McConnell. Did he even give anyone a reason to vote for Republicans? I don't think he did, and I think he even said as much, that we're not going to run so much against the Democrats. It was just they're not gonna give anyone a reason to vote for them. They're just gonna run against what the Democrats are, which is dumb. You know what I mean? Like, the Democrats are giving you a wide open space here to, to say, hey, this is the reason to vote for us. Instead, you're just saying, look at those evil fucks. Now, after you say that, you're supposed to be like, this is why we're not evil fucks. And the Republicans aren't saying that. Or at least, again, establishment Republicans aren't saying, that, why you should vote for us. And that should be alarming. And again, this is what Mitch McConnell is guilty of coming out of this election. And it was so toxic that it got to the point where obviously Democrats and the majority of independents were like, yeah, no, not that, And that's very problematic because you have this intra-party war going on with Republicans where essentially these never-Trumpers are aligned with the Democrats, and it's almost like 2/3 of the electorate now are moving against Trump and his associates and essentially his campaign now. But that's that's not what's going on here. What's going on here is Trump isn't in power. McConnell and McCarthy are. They're responsible for getting their Senate and House members reelected or elected, and so far both of them have failed to do so. Again, there weren't as many Republicans on the Senate. I think the Senate was more of the Republicans playing defense, and there was a few seats that were open that they ended up losing, like the Fetterman picked up that Pennsylvania seat, but I think they held on to all of their seats just like the Democrats did. And one of the things that we saw Mitch McConnell do was he would refuse to back any of these Trump candidates, like Blake Masters, for instance, because Blake Masters said if he goes into if he gets elected and goes into the Senate, he's not going to vote for Mitch McConnell. And Mitch McConnell was pretty clear that in saying that if anyone comes out against him, he's not going to give you any money to run for Senate. And could Blake Masters have used that money against Mark Kelly because he ultimately did lose that race? Maybe. Again, I personally don't know if these TV ads work. But then again, after this election, I'm almost tempted to believe that they do because the majority of the people voting in this electorate are they're sleeping, man. They are sleepy fucks, just like the other guy over my shoulder here. So you think, after the Republicans technically still won the game, but like if you're the Packers, which this is not the same Packers team that we probably shouldn't use the Packers anymore. We'll say if you're the Kansas City Chiefs and you're supposed to win a game 35-0, and you end up winning by the skin of your teeth. Yeah, you won the game, but did you really win? And I think that's kind of where everyone's looking at how this worked out for the Republicans. Yes, they won the game, but they almost lost it if you think about it too. And again, I don't want to be negative about it, but that's kind of what the situation is. So you think with these things going on with the Republicans, like, oh, obviously this caused the Republican leadership to look inward and take responsibility for failing to capitalize on this red tsunami. But no, that's not what happens. What do you think that they do? Instead of Mitch McConnell, Kevin McCarthy, Ronna McDaniel, any of them saying, I should probably, look inward, take some responsibility, and, come out to the American people and say, this is what happened, this is what I should have done better. Basically how they would treat their employees. What would they do? They just blame Trump. We didn't do anything wrong. This is just Trump and his toxic politics. You literally watch the Tuesday after the Tuesday during the election, the Wednesday, Thursday, all those days following, you literally watched both establishments kind of turn almost in the same way to move to to snuff out Trump and try to get ahead of what his re-election campaign is going to be, and basically by blaming these bad candidates on him. Now, were there bad candidates? Yes. Now, this is where it definitely gets interesting because you had let's look at it this way. Does everyone remember when Hillary was running for the Democrats and the Republicans were still in their primary as well? The Democrat primary was like, Bernie, was this guy like Mike O'Malley? I don't think it was Mike O'Malley. Whatever. It was like 4 guys, okay? And one by one, they all fell. Bernie gave Hillary a run for his money, and essentially the DNC snuffed him out. But while all this was going on, everyone knew Hillary was going to be the Democrat nominee. So while that was happening, at least in the presidential race, and I have to assume everywhere else in the country, the Democrats were elevating Donald Trump. Now maybe, and you wonder like where this strategy came from. Look it up. This is stuff that Obama was doing back when he was campaigning all the time. So they kind of stole this move from him, from what I've gathered. Maybe someone else came up with this move, but he's the one that made it at least popular over the last 15 years. And the Clinton campaign decided to do the same thing with Donald Trump. We're going to just elevate this guy. So hopefully he wins the RNC, and then we can face him, and it'll be easy. And what do I mean by elevate? They basically run ads for this person in Republican districts. So, in Texas, there were probably a lot of pro-Trump ads that were being paid for by Democrat super PACs that were pro-Hillary, is kind of what I'm saying here. And this is essentially what happened in this election, and probably the last few too, because since Donald Trump came into office, a lot of people have been trying to take this, toxic albatross and stick it over the necks of all these Trump candidates. He's just like Trump. He's this, he's that, white nationalist. I mean, you get the gist, okay? So what's happened in this midterm election was you had a lot of MAGA candidates that were elevated by Democrats, okay? And this is very interesting because you have Democrats who are saying out of one side of their mouth, hey, these MAGA candidates are a threat to democracy. I mean, there were at least 2 Biden campaigns, Biden presidential speeches, campaign, whatever it is, where he's talking about this. The MAGA candidates, MAGA this. You see what I'm saying? Like, the Democrats are elevating these candidates out of one side of their mouth and then saying that they're evil out of the other. Well, which one is it? Because you can't have it both ways. And that's kind of what's been happening here through this midterm election. You have these two, the Democrats speaking out of both sides of their mouth, elevating these candidates, and then saying they're evil. Well, which one is it? Because if they're evil, then you're the one responsible for elevating them and giving them a chance to run for power, or you're lying to your constituency. And then if you're lying about something as simple as that, what else are you lying about as well? So the Republicans sit here and claim, well, this is all about candidate quality and the rehashing of the 2020 election, and that's what really cost them these votes. And I have to say, no, that is wrong. This isn't about, maybe does that factor into it? Yeah, this could definitely be argued. But to say like, oh, this is the whole reason, this is why we lost the election, that is verifiably false. Because what happened was these so-called MAGA candidates weren't really endorsed until they were essentially winning their primary. And if you don't believe me, look it up. I remember there was, I think, out of the Missouri Republican race for Senate. Either way, there was a bunch of guys named, I think they were all named, like 3 of them were named Eric, and Trump came out and said, I'm going to endorse the Eric guy. This is what he does. He never picked a guy. Maybe there was a few instances where he did pick someone from the beginning, but we all know how Trump operates. And again, this shows you how the establishment media, the legacy media, these corporate Democrats, they like to talk out of both sides of their mouth, and they're going to tell you, these candidates are evil, and then we're going to elevate them at the same time. I was clearly about to say something else, and I just forgot what I was going to say. So I'm going to keep moving on here. So these so-called MAGA candidates were endorsed by Trump, but really not till the end. And again, no one wants to talk about that because they know no one's paying attention to the primaries except people like me, and there's a very few amount of people like me who pay attention like that. So the majority of the people think, oh, well, Trump endorsed all these guys. Well, I can't vote for someone like that. And in a way, that's a form of voter suppression, if you think about it. Now everyone has a right to choose who they want to vote, but when you're kind of, taking the message and skewering it, like it's not really, like you're almost, again, guilty out of talking out of both sides of your mouth. Like it's okay when Democrats, spew misinformation, but if Republicans do it, well, this is a threat to democracy. And so now what we have is talking head neocons and corporate Democrats, like I was alluding to earlier, have the same exact talking points. It's candidate quality. It's Trump's fault. These are all Mitch McConnell ally talking points. Like, you have to understand that the second the midterm, it became clear what the picture of the midterm was, that was what the narrative became. And how do you think that became possible? Most likely because Mitch McConnell and his allies in the media, in the bureaucracy of Washington, were crafting this narrative that this is about Trump's bad quality candidates and his toxic politics, which I wholeheartedly disagree with, because you, Mitch McConnell, sir, had a chance to give the people a platform to vote for you on, and instead you chose to just run against how bad the Democrats are. And honestly, this is why there's a uniparty, because the established Democrats and these establishment Republicans, they're just as bad. And as if you really want to reduce this down, I mean, I almost am convinced this is just about toxic boomer politics and toxic boomers just in general. Like, get out of power. All you guys are in your 80s. I mean, at this point, Nancy Pelosi's getting the high ground. I mean, if she really wanted the high ground, she should just retire and go into private life. But instead, she's like, I'm not going to be in leadership anymore. I'm just going to on the sidelines. Let me break off really quick and talk about that fast. Can you imagine? I like to talk about things in restaurant terms because that's where I cut my teeth for a really long portion of from my teens all the way till, I mean, I don't work in restaurants anymore, but for the longest time, that's what I was doing. And I've seen this before where you have someone, that was in a position of authority, and, they don't really want to have that authority anymore. They lose whatever the situation is, and they come back, and it's just fucking awkward for everyone. And with Nancy Pelosi, she was the third in line to the presidency, okay? And you're the Speaker of the House, and you're going to go from Speaker of the House to just being in your House seat and having an advisory role to the leadership. Okay, think about that. Think about if you finally became the general manager or the head honcho in whatever office or place that you work, and the guy that used to be there is like, yeah, but I'm going to have that office down the hallway, and, if you need something or if I feel like I have to put in my 2 cents, I'll let you know. No one would want to work under those conditions whatsoever, and that's about what the Democrat Congress is about to walk themselves into. Okay, anyway, so we were talking about how these Mitch McConnell ally talking points have been crafting the narrative, and this is why I'm a little scared of Ron the Con DeSantis, because what's the pivot that the establishment Democrats and mostly the establishment Republicans are going to? Oh, well, look at Ron DeSantis. Look at Ron DeSantis. He destroyed Chris by almost 20 points, if not 20 points. This man is the anointed leader of the Republican Party, and he's in power, might I add. Yes, sir. He is in power. So the problem here with Ron DeSantis is he's clearly he's got the backing of establishment Republicans and, I guess by proxy, establishment Democrats, because they just want him to run against Trump to knock him out so they can have that, fuck you, Trump, you're done moment. And this just shows you how short-sighted these people are, because the second Ron DeSantis, Ron the Con, becomes the Republican nominee, if he does, which I don't think he will, then they're going to turn all that ire to him. Okay, so it's a losing proposition. I don't know why anyone would, whatever. It doesn't matter. The thing is with Ron the Con is Trump is running on the Republican Party is Trump's party. We know that by the numbers. He has 90% of the base. So for these establishment Republicans to sit there and be like, oh no, this is not Trump's party anymore. This is Ron DeSantis. Well, there's one problem with that. The America First movement is Trump's movement. It's not the Republican Party's movement. It's not Mitch McConnell's. It's not Kevin McCarthy's. If anything, they're hanging on to the America First movement is because it's one of the reasons that keeps them getting votes, other than the fact that they've been in the Republican Party since Warren Harding was fucking elected 100 years ago. And by taking Trump out of the mix and putting Ron DeSantis in there, it's no longer the America First movement. If Ron the Con wants to run for president, he is more than welcome to do so. I'm not saying he shouldn't run, but for the establishment and Ron the Con to say, well, I am the new leader of the America First movement, this is bat crazy bullshit stuff that they want you to think. This is where the Republicans are going to try to start brainwashing Trump supporters to move over to their side under the terms of bad candidates, electability, and toxic politics, which I just think is fucking fucking crazy. And you can't write this man off. And as we watched in real time, this is exactly what the Republican establishment was doing, the Democrat establishment, and anyone that was kind of pro DeSantis on some level. And again, I understand why everyone wants DeSantis to run. I really do. He destroyed Florida. I mean, he won this state by 20 points. He won counties that were normally, plus 20 or double digits for Democrats through the years. But, there's a lot of things I think people who aren't really, I'm not trying to say I'm a political, I'm astute in politics. I just kind of follow this stuff very closely, and I have a very good general understanding of it. And if you're not someone that follows this stuff every day, like, it's very nuanced. And what I don't think a lot of people, outside looking in, you look at Ron DeSantis and you think like, oh, look at this guy. He was a governor of Florida. He basically governed this state out of a pandemic. I live here. It became one of the most popular states. For a while, it was like one of the only states you could go to. We don't have a state income tax here. There's a lot of people moving down here from the Northeast. All of our neighbors are from fucking New Jersey. And you get the point, But here's the thing. Running a state and the federal government are like two fucking different things, okay? First of all, here in Florida, he's got a state legislator that is very, very Republican. I mean, there's not a lot. I wish I knew the numbers off the top of my head, but it's definitely, the numbers are definitely in favor for Republicans here, to the point where they can just pass things willy-nilly, and they don't have to worry about pushback from Democrats. And that's in both houses, okay? So his governing isn't really challenged that much legislatively here. Now, we've seen, yes, when it comes to hurricanes, natural disasters, a pandemic, the way he deals with other politicians, he's a politician. He's skilled with that stuff. But again, running a state and the federal government are two different things, and we haven't seen, Ron DeSantis run, the government, so to speak, or run it from, by running one of the three branches. Obviously he was a legislator. That power is extremely diluted, and like I said earlier, his voting record kind of suggests he's a bit of a neocon, which brings, that's the neocon movement isn't the America First movement, so you can't really combine the two. It's not going to work. So, he has some obviously federal experience, but running a country and running a federal district, we're running within these are two different things. And I don't think he's going to have as much success as he has here in Florida by moving, into federal office as a president. And then, then there's just he's still got to get past Trump. And look how that looked out. How did that work out for Jeb Bush? How did that work out for Ted Cruz? How did that work out for Rick Perry? How did that work out for what the fuck's that guy's name? Well, you get what I'm saying. I mean, this guy took down dynasty after dynasty after dynasty. How about Hillary Clinton? He took her down. I mean, these are huge political families that just one by one went down all from Trump. And if you're Ron DeSantis, this has to be in your calculus. Because if you decide to run against him, this guy, sure, you might win the Republican nomination, but then you're going to come out of that thing so bloodied that it might not even be possible to win in the general election anymore, because the second they're done with Trump, they're going to turn that same ire onto you. And no Republican is safe. John McCain thought he was safe, and then look what happened when he became the nominee. And then they started liking him again when, that war hero who isn't a war hero, war heroes don't get captured, went against Trump and voted against the skinny ACA bill, the Obamacare repeal bill, and all of a sudden the media loves him again. I mean, it's fucking crazy. So I think overall what Ron DeSantis should do is just not run, because if I tell Tulsi Gabbard's going to run, Mike Pence is going to run, the guy who was the CIA for the Trump, I can't believe I can't remember his name, Mike something, whatever, he's going to run. What would DeSantis, why would DeSantis run? Again, it's going to be a crowded field. You're going to have to take on Trump. That could work against you in the long run. So why don't you just, me selfishly, I think he should finish out his term here in Florida in 2026 and then just run again in 2028. Now, some people will argue against that by saying doing that is stupid because, you might not have any political capital to be running on in 2028. Even if he's going to run on the coronavirus from 8 years earlier. So I understand that, but running against Trump, you might not even have the option to run again in 2028. And again, if Trump wins, he's only going to be there for one term. So, like, it's not like you have to wait that long. Yeah, I get it. 4 years is a long time. But regardless, 2024, 2028, 2028 is going to be available. This time you won't have to run against Trump. And if he wins, you might be able to use his base, who will, at that point, be more willing to move over to someone because they don't feel they're just trying to push him out. And that's where I'm at there. It's going to be very interesting to see how this announcement goes and how the next 6 months play out, because we're going to start, Trump's going to have the field probably till about January, February, and then I think by the end of the winter, early spring, we'll start seeing other people throwing their hat into the ring. And if you agree, let me know. Comment below. Share this video. It helps definitely get the video out there. Share it with your friends. Let me know what you think. And yeah, we'll go from there. I love engaging with everyone in the comments. I mean, the comments get brutal. I'm not gonna lie. It gets pretty funny down there. You guys make me laugh. I gotta tell you, I love it. The internet, you guys always win. Always, always, always get the W. Okay. Well, that's going to do it for this week, folks. Thanks for sticking around. This was definitely a little bit of a long one. Try to keep them short usually, and definitely a lot to say this week. So we'll definitely be clipping this out. Yeah, give the video a like. Subscribe to the Facebook page. Subscribe to the YouTube page. And we'll see you next week, you fucks.